Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a statistic that, honestly, it kept me up last night. I was reading through the material for this and saw that in the average American home, something like 30% of the conditioned air, the air you paid good money to heat or cool, it just leaves the building every single hour.
It is a staggering number. You're essentially paying to heat the neighborhood.
Exactly. And, we tend to think of our homes as these solid, impenetrable castles,
Mm.
but the data suggests they're more like, well, like Swiss cheese.
Ah, yeah.
So today we are going deep on the solution. We're talking about blown-in insulation, but we're moving way past that cliche of the itchy pink rolls. We're looking at the actual building science of how you turn a house into a sealed thermal envelope.
And that's the key phrase right there, thermal envelope.
Yeah.
We're not just stuffing fluff into a wall. We're managing heat flow, air pressure, and moisture.
Right, and the sources today are fascinating because they pit these different materials against each other, not just on price, but on, the actual physics of how they work.
Mhm.
We've got the old standard, fiberglass.
Mhm.
We've got the recycled powerhouse, cellulose, the industrial titan, mineral wool, and then the high-tech chemical solution, spray foam.
It's a bit of a forensic investigation today. We really have to look at how these things behave under stress heat, water, fire, you name it.
Before we even get to the materials, though, I want to unpack the why. The articles kept mentioning something called the stack effect. And I feel like I get the basic concept of hot air rises, but this seems, I don't know, more aggressive than that.
It's much more aggressive. Think of your house in winter like a giant chimney. You heat the air inside, right? That warm air becomes buoyant and it rises to the very top of your house, your attic.
Okay.
And it creates this massive positive pressure up there. It's literally pushing against the ceiling, trying to escape through every tiny crack, every light fixture.
And because nature, abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. As that air pushes out the top, it creates negative pressure at the bottom down in your basement or on the ground floor. So it literally sucks cold outside air in through the rim joists, foundation cracks, you name it.
So you're telling me if you have a drafty living room, the actual problem might be in your attic.
Precisely. You can't stop the draft at the bottom if you don't seal the big hole at the top. And that is where blown-in insulation enters the chat. Unlike those rigid bats that always leave gaps, this stuff is fluid. It flows around wires and pipes and just stops that airflow.
Okay, so the mission is to stop the stack effect. Let's look at the toolkit. First up, blown-in fiberglass. Now, looking at the specs, this is spun glass fibers. It's that white cloud look you see in attics.
Right.
But I was reading some critiques that suggest it performs very differently in a lab versus, the real world.
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it. Look,
Yeah.
fiberglass is the most common option because it's cheap and it's lightweight. But that lightweight nature is its Achilles heel. It has a much lower density.
And density matters because of something called convective loops, right? This part blew my mind.
It's fascinating physics, isn't it? Because blown fiberglass is so airy. If you have a big temperature difference, say a really cold winter night, the air inside the insulation can actually start to circulate.
Wait, so you have mini weather systems happening inside your insulation?
Yes, the air warms up against the drywall of your ceiling. It rises through the fluff, hits that cold top layer in the attic, cools down, and then sinks right back down again. It is effectively pumping heat out of your house. So while the bag says R30 on a freezing night, its actual performance might drop significantly.
That seems like a massive flaw for a product specifically designed to keep you warm.
It is, and it's why air sealing is so critical with fiberglass. It filters air, it doesn't block it. It's like wearing a thick wool sweater on a really windy day. Sure, it's thick, but the wind just cuts right through it.
Okay, let's pivot to the heavyweight champ in the sizes. Cellulose. This stuff seems to be the darling of the building performance world. It's 85% recycled newspaper and cardboard.
It is, and, immediately people get nervous. They think, wait, I'm insulating my house with old paper. Isn't that a fire hazard?
I mean, it's a fair question, but the chemistry here is really cool. It's treated with borates.
Right, usually boric acid. It's a natural mineral. And it doesn't just make the paper harder to burn. It's an active chemical reaction. When borate-treated cellulose gets hot, it actually releases water vapor.
So it sweats to put out its own fire.
Essentially, yeah. And it creates a char layer that blocks oxygen. You can find burn tests online where a blowtorch just melts fiberglass. But the cellulose just chars on the surface and protects the wood stud right behind it.
And that borate treatment does double duty, too. I read it's terrible for insects.
It is. It disrupts their digestive system. So ants, termites, Even mice, they just hate the stuff. They won't tunnel through it like they will with fiberglass.
But the real performance stat here is the density, right? We talked about those convective loops in fiberglass. Does cellulose have that same problem?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Cellulose is much heavier and it packs in so much tighter. We call it dense packing.
Hmm.
When you blow it in, the particles physically lock together. It effectively chokes off those convective loops. It doesn't just insulate, it acts as an airflow retarder.
So it's the sweater and a light windbreaker combined.
That is a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, it has a higher R value per inch, usually around 3.5 to 3.8.
Okay. Now there's a third option that sounds like it belongs in a military bunker. Mineral wool or rock wool. This is made from melted basalt rock.
The tough guy of insulation is spun stone.
The use case here seems pretty specific. I mean, you wouldn't do a whole attic with this unless you had really deep pockets, right?
No, it's expensive and it's heavy, but
Yeah.
it is hydrophobic. It literally repels water, and it's practically fireproof to something like 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow. So if you live in a wildfire zone or maybe a super high moisture coastal area, this is the premium upgrade.
Exactly. It also doesn't settle. Cellulose can settle a bit over time, but stone wool stays exactly where you put it.
Let's talk about the nemesis that just destroys all these R values. Moisture. The sources make a distinction between air leakage and vapor diffusion. Can we parse that? Because I think people assume moisture just phases through walls like a ghost.
A lot of people do think that.
Hmm.
But 98% of the moisture that gets into your walls or your attic is carried there on an air current. It's that stack effect we talked about. Only a tiny fraction actually diffuses through the drywall itself.
So if you stop the air, you basically stop the water.
For the most part, yes. But here's where the material choice gets really critical. If a roof leaks, or you just have high humidity, how does the insulation handle it?
The comparison to a sponge for fiberglass was pretty damning.
It's accurate. Fiberglass gets wet, it clumps, it loses all its loft, and there goes your R value. And worse, it holds that water right up against your wooden framing, which is just an invitation for rot.
And cellulose, I mean, it's paper, so I'd assume it absorbs water like a sponge, too.
It does absorb water, but it's hygroscopic. It can take on moisture and then release it without losing its structure up to a point. It sort of buckers the moisture. But if it gets totally saturated, it can take a very long time to dry out.
Which brings us to the, I guess, the nuclear option for wet areas, spray foam. Specifically, closed cell foam.
Right. For basements, crawl spaces, or rim joists, basically anywhere concrete meets wood, you cannot use the fluffy stuff. You need a real vapor barrier. Closed cell foam cures into a hard, rigid plastic. It completely blocks both air and water.
The cold surface phenomenon was a really interesting point. It mentioned why putting fiberglass in a basement rim joist is just a recipe for mold.
Think about a cold can of soda on a hot day. Condensation forms on the surface. In winter, your rim joist is that cold can. If you just stuff fiberglass there, the warm, moist indoor air passes right through it, hits that cold wood, and condenses. Now you've got wet wood hidden behind insulation.
And the foam prevents that because...
Yes, it adheres directly to the wood. It completely eliminates that air gap. The warm air never touches the cold surface.
Okay, so we've got our materials. But I think the biggest takeaway I got from all the research is that the material itself almost matters less than the installation. You can buy the most expensive rock wool, but if you install it wrong, it's worthless.
Absolutely. We have to talk about the process. It's not just pointing a hose and letting it rip.
Let's walk through a retrofit. Step 1 isn't even insulation, it's air sealing.
This is non-negotiable. Before a single flake of cellulose goes in, a crew has to crawl into that attic with foam guns and caulk. They're hunting for all the bypasses, the gaps around the chimney, plumbing pipes, those old recessed light fixtures.
Because if you don't seal those, the stack effect is just going to push air right through your brand new insulation anyway.
Exactly. It's like putting a warm hat on a head that's bleeding. You have to stop the bleeding first.
I loved the detail about the tube method for walls, the drill and fill technique. I always just assumed they stuck a nozzle in the hole and blasted it until it was full.
And that is the recipe for a cold house. If you just blast it from the entry hole, the insulation bridges, it gets stuck on itself and creates a clog near the hole, while the rest of the wall cavity is still empty.
So it looks full from the outside, but it's actually hollow?
Right. The proper way is to insert a flexible tube all the way to the top of that wall cavity, turn on the machine, and then slowly pull the tube down as the cavity fills up behind it. You're dense packing it from the bottom up.
And the pressure matters here, too. I read about blowouts, which sounds, pretty dramatic.
It can be. If the installer cranks the pressure too high on the machine, you can literally pop the drywall right off the studs inside the house. It takes a skilled hand to get the density high enough to stop air, but low enough to keep the walls attached.
So how do you verify this? I mean, as a homeowner, I can't see inside my walls. The text mentioned using thermal imaging.
It's the ultimate lie detector. A thermal camera sees heat. If you look at a properly insulated wall, it should be one solid color. If you see dark blue spots in the winter, those are voids. It's like having X-ray vision for heat loss.
Okay, so I think we need to talk dollars and cents. We've got these different tiers of products. Where's the sweet spot for most people?
For most people, it's what we call a hybrid approach.
Explain that.
Well, closed-cell spray foam is, the best performer for air sealing, but it costs a fortune, $3, $4, $5, $6 a square foot or more. Cellulose is cheap, maybe $1.50, $2 a square foot.
So you mix them.
Exactly. You use the expensive high-performance foam on the critical, tricky spots, that rim joist in the basement, the attic eaves where there's very little space. Then for the big, open, easy areas of the attic floor, you just pile up 18 inches of affordable cellulose.
So you get the waterproof seal where you need it and the deep thermal blanket where it's easy and cheap.
It maximizes your R value per dollar. It's the smartest way to do it.
What about the carbon payback? This was a provocative idea in one of the articles. We always talk about insulation saving money, but we rarely talk about the carbon footprint of the insulation itself.
It's a huge topic in building science right now. Spray foam, fiberglass, they take a lot of energy to manufacture. I mean, spray foam is basically liquid plastic. But cellulose, it's
Wow.
shredded paper. It's wood fiber. That wood has already sequestered carbon during the tree's life.
So by packing your attic with cellulose, you're effectively turning your house into a carbon sink.
In a way, yeah. You're locking that carbon up in your attic for 50 years, while at the same time you're reducing the carbon your furnace is emitting. The carbon payback time for cellulose is incredibly fast, sometimes just a few months. For foam, it can take years to save enough energy to offset the energy it took to make it.
That is a total perspective shift. It's not just about the utility bill.
It's about the total impact of the home.
Okay, I want to address one final fear people have, the retrofit question. If I already have old, thin insulation up there, do I have to vacuum it all out? That sounds incredibly expensive.
It depends. We call it the top hat. If your old fiberglass is dry and it's clean and just thin, you can absolutely blow cellulose right over it. The weight of the cellulose actually compresses the old fiberglass and improves its performance a little.
But if there are, say, mouse tunnels in it,
If there's any rodent activity, urine, or God forbid mold, it has to go. You cannot bury a biohazard in your ceiling. It will absolutely affect your indoor air quality.
and that connects right back to that house as a system idea. The air in your attic doesn't just stay in your attic.
It does not. If you have a leaky return duct, or just that stack effect we keep talking about, you are breathing your attic air. So cleaning it out is a health decision, not just an energy one.
So let's wrap this up with a final thought for everyone listening. We've gone from physics to chemistry to economics here.
I think the big takeaway is that insulation isn't just stuff. It is a system.
And for me, the provocative thought is this. We spend so much time and money thinking about the efficiency of our furnace or our AC unit. We buy the high-efficiency model. But if your envelope is leaking, aren't you just, no, you're putting a race car engine in a golf cart.
That is the perfect analogy. The most energy-efficient heat is the heat you don't lose in the first place. The fluff is actually more important than the furnace.
So before you upgrade your HVAC, maybe go stick your head in the attic. Or, better yet, call a pro who has a thermal camera.
And check the rim joists. Don't forget the rim joists.
Words to live by. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one.